Hi class, welcome to Module 3. We are already halfway through this course. Remember there's only 4 modules, so by this point you've already completed 2 of them. You only have Module 3 and 4 to go. So be excited, you are halfway done. This presentation we're going to have just a few announcements and then I'll give you just a general Module 3 overview. So first, Module 2, first and foremost, thank you for your discussion board posts. I think I've said it before. I really enjoy the discussion board. You might not see that I'm very active on it, but I am reading your posts. I'm really excited when I see how you are applying your research skills out in the real world or how you're tackling a research issue. I find it interesting. I learn a lot from you, and hopefully you're learning a lot from one another. I really love seeing the work that you all are doing. So thank you for posting to the discussion board, and I look forward to Module 3's discussion. An announcement about Module 3, one of your content items for this module is a Cali lesson. You should already be familiar with Cali lessons. The Cali lesson for this module is the Maryland Legal Research Primary Sources Cali lesson. And I've noted this on the Blackboard page, but I also wanted to stress it here. You just have to complete the administrative law material section of that Cali lesson. You do not have to complete the full lesson. So again, you just need to complete the administrative law material section of the Maryland Legal Research Primary Sources Cali lesson. You do not have to complete the whole lesson. It's a pretty substantial long lesson in total, so I don't want you to have to do it all, just the administrative law materials section. So we are now in Module 3. We're going to be looking at administrative agency materials. So we're looking at the regulatory process, regulations. How do these agencies implement the statutes that we looked at last week? So important due dates for Module 3. Module 3 will be accessible on Monday, February 6th. Your first original post discussion post is due February 12th, and then February 19th your response post to the discussion board is due, and also Module 3 assignment is due. The Module 3 assignment is similar to Module 1 and 2's assignments, the short answers, so you shouldn't have any surprises with that. Just a brief overview of where we are in terms of our legal research and what we're looking at. So last week we looked at legislation and legislative history. So we looked at that top legislative box up there. And at the federal level, the Constitution gives Congress the power to make all laws. So Congress, the legislature, makes laws, the statutes. The executive is tasked with executing those laws. So the executive executes. So they execute the laws primarily through regulations. That's what we're going to look at this week. And they do that through executive agencies. We also have executive orders in this module. So how the executive implements the laws that the legislature makes. And then, of course, we have the judicial branch. In law school, you get lots and lots of experience reading cases, looking at case law. So you should be probably most familiar with that judicial branch where they interpret and they also make laws through common law. So this week we're looking at that center box, that executive. How does the president actually execute the laws? And that's going to be primarily through regulations. So the difference between regulations and statutes. A statute creates policy. The legislature creates policy, and then regulations implement that policy. How is that policy actually going to happen? How do we implement it? So statutes will be at the federal level through the U.S. Code. So if you see USC, that's a statute. The Maryland Code is Maryland Code. If you see that, it's a statute. Regulations, you have at the federal level, the Code of Federal Regulations, CFR. So if you see CFR, you're dealing with a regulation. Maryland, we have the Code of Maryland Regulations known as COMAR. If something has COMAR in the citation, you're dealing with a regulation. So keep that in mind as you're reading through things, that you're not confusing a statute with a regulation or vice versa. So a little visual of the difference between statutes and regulations. A statute creates policy. It's creating policy, so it tends to be shorter. What you're looking at here is part of the Internal Revenue Code, so part of the tax code, Title 26 of the USC, the US Code, so we have a statute, and this is Section 2002, liability for payment. And it's just one sentence. The statute says the tax imposed by this chapter shall be paid by the executor. That's the statutory language. That is what the legislature passed. Now, how do we actually implement that? How do we know, how does the executor pay? What do they pay? How does this actually happen? How do we implement this language? That's where the regulation comes in. So what we have here is Title 26, Internal Revenue Code section of the Code of Federal Regulations, the CFR. And this is Section 20.2002, liability for tax payment of tax. This is the regulation that implements the statutory language that we just looked at. So here's part of the regulation. Here's another part. And if I wanted to, I could continue to go on and on. Regulations are longer, or tend to be longer, because they have to implement the code. They have to give us the processes for actually doing what the statute is telling us to. So regulations tend to be longer. They tend to be more involved. And they also involve public comments in a way that statutes don't often. This is the basic regulatory process. And this process starts where we ended last week. So if you remember, in the legislative process, we have a bill. It's proposed. It goes through that long road of the legislative process, and then it eventually, hopefully, becomes an actual statute, gets signed into law. So once it gets signed into law, oftentimes, or the statute will say which agencies have the power to implement that statute. So the statute gets signed into law, and then the agency or agencies that are involved with implementing the law then get the statute and then try to figure out, okay, how do we implement this? So the federal agency will start composing regulations. They'll propose the regulation, and they'll publish a notice of proposed rulemaking, NPRMs. And those go out for public comments. They're all published in the Federal Register, and the public can submit comments. So this public comment period allows the public to say, this is good, this is bad, this will impact us in this way. That is an open comment period. Those comments go back to the agency will review them. They might apply them, they might not, they might rewrite the regulations, maybe propose them again, have more comments. It goes back and forth until they finally compose a final rule, and then they issue the final rule. And those final rules are then added to the Code of Federal Regulations, and those are arranged according to subject. So previously we had the Internal Revenue Code, so a tax subject, maybe agriculture. So they're arranged by subjects similar to how the statutes are arranged. So that's the basic regulatory process. Now, at the state level, we go through a similar regulatory process. Proposed regulations and any changes to a regulation have to be published in the Maryland Register. similar to the Federal Register, but at Maryland we have the Maryland Register. The Maryland Register, you can get the 3 most recent issues, are available freely online. You can also get them on Westlaw and Lexis. You'll go through this in the module of where to access them. I just want to make you aware that the website for accessing both the Maryland Register and for accessing COMAR, the Code of Maryland Regulations, was recently updated. So the Division of State Documents in Maryland updated their website. So it will look different than what might be in some of the videos you review for this class. If you notice any issues, any difficulty with navigating the new website, let me know, because it's been so recently updated. I haven't really been able to explore it much. I don't think there are substantial differences, but there might be. And this is a learning opportunity that unfortunately these systems get updated, and one day you will know exactly how to use it, and then the next day they'll send out an update and you will have no idea how to use it. So that is what has happened to me with the Division of State Documents in Maryland. Is one day I was looking on the old website, could navigate it, and then the next day I opened it up and it looked completely different, and I have to relearn it. You'll encounter that a lot. So I just want to give you that warning. And again, reach out to me if you notice any issues or anything that just is ultra confusing. And I do just want to give you a little bit of a warning about Module 3 assignment. I think there are fewer questions than the Module 2 assignment, but it might take you longer because agency and regulatory research can be a bit more challenging and can take more time. Remember the difference between the statutory language and the regulatory language. Just searching through the document might take longer. So give yourself time. You also might not be as familiar with doing regulatory research or agency research. Unless you've been working in that in clinics or in your internships, you don't get as much experience doing that sort of research in law school. So you just might not be as familiar with it. It takes a little while to become comfortable. So give yourself time. The optional review materials that are on Blackboard, there's some review materials on regulatory research that kind of refreshes your memory from what you learned in Intro to Legal Research. So definitely use those, and also look at secondary sources to develop knowledge. If you don't know what something means, look it up. If you're still having trouble navigating Westlaw, Lexis, or Bloomberg, even after going through the content, it can be easy to just Google, say, Lexis docket research or Lexis regulatory research. Oftentimes what you'll get is one of Lexis's websites that will describe it, or Westlaw or Bloomberg. Do the same with them. Sometimes they have good descriptions that maybe our resources didn't describe it in a way that you understood. So always look at that. So that is everything for Module 3. As always, if you have any questions or need anything, don't hesitate to reach out. I am always here to help, always happy to help, and I look forward to reading your discussion board posts. Have a great 2 weeks, and I'll talk to you for Module 4.